Hello fellow lovers of the liminal and the weird, and welcome to another video by Liminal Spaces. Today I'm going to be talking about a short story that I discovered recently by a writer that I haven't even heard of, and that is The Causeway by M.John Harrison. And the way that I chanced upon this story is I'm still reading Gene Wolfe's The Claw of the Conciliator. Conciliator? So I had to find a couple of things to do this week, and I decided to come back to my very beat up copy of New Worlds Quarterly #2 from 1971. This is where I discovered the Norman Spinrad story, No Direction Home, which I did a video on a couple of weeks back. So I really liked Michael Moorcock's editing. I like the type of stories he chooses, so I figured I'd just keep diving into this. So I read a few of these in here, and I didn't really like them very much. So I was like, dang it, I'm going to have to move on to something else. I'm not going to find it in here. And then I was speaking with my brother and just telling him kind of the basic outlines of these stories. And I kept talking to him about this story, The Causeway, and how interesting it was. And eventually, he's like, that's the one you should do. So I've decided that I am going to talk about it. It is interesting to note that when I first read this, I wasn't a huge fan of it. I didn't really... it was very... It's not dark, but it's just... The main character is so awful that I just instantly kind of pushed it aside in my brain as something that I would be doing. It was just too much. But the more I talked about it, the more that I've decided that this M.John Harrison guy is really ahead of his time. All right, I'm going to get into a quick synopsis of the story, and then we'll talk more about the publication of this particular story and its author. So The Causeway is told from the point of view of a astronaut named Chrome, who has landed on a planet that nobody's even really thought about or gone to in over 100 years. And on this planet, he finds a large causeway or bridge that it goes all the way across an ocean, connecting two continents. And there's a bunch of people living in villages, and he calls them all peasants. And he seems absolutely bored with space travel. I can't tell if these people are humans that settled there long before, or if they are aliens that are very humanoid-like. The story never really says. But he's spent the last week that he's been on this planet obsessing over a specific woman, so much so that he's basically been stalking her and watching her, and he's determined that she has no husband or boyfriend, so he wants to take her away from her small life, as he thinks about it, and take her off to be, I guess, an astronaut with him or wherever he wants to take her. She has showed absolutely no interest in this and has asked him repeatedly to just leave the planet. And she tells him that the next day, when our story starts, he's talking to her, asking her to go. He'd already been there a week. And she says the next day a migration is beginning. And that he won't want any part of that, and that he needs to go. And the rest of the story is him trying to convince her to leave this migration and go with him. And that's the basic premise of the story. I don't want to go any farther without mentioning spoilers, which I'll do in a little while. M. John Harrison is apparently known for the Viraconium world. I hope I said that right. If you guys have read this, let me know what you think. It's interesting. From what I've read about it, it sounds a lot like Gene Wolfe style stuff, but I think he wrote his earlier, in the sense that it is Earth, but it's a dying later Earth. And he writes about people that are basically living in medieval style times culturally, but they are able to operate but not build or understand old technology from the 20th century. This was, of course, inspired by Jack Vance's The Dying Earth, which I'm wondering if Wolf was inspired by as well. Who knows? But it sounds really, really interesting. So if you're familiar with M.John Harrison or his Viraconium novels at all, please let me know in the comments. I'm very interested in talking about them. I believe that this story, The Causeway, was published only in this book of mine that is just falling apart, but I love it. Yeah, the cover's coming off, and this is almost split now at the story that, yep, it's split at The Causeway. So that's the story I read. This one is, yeah, there we go. I think this is the only place it was published until 2020, when they published a new collection of short stories by M.John Harrison, and I've forgotten what it's called. Settling the World, selected stories 1970 through 2020. And that's a short story collection from Coma Press. So, yeah, this one recently saw a republish. Do I recommend this story? I do. It's, the best way I can describe it is kind of a grenade story, in the sense that you'll read it and go, oh, that was weird and annoying and kind of gross. And then you'll walk away and the story will keep echoing in your head and you won't be able to stop thinking about it. And then it will finally go off. And you'll realize that it's probably a pretty brilliant story. And I do think it's a brilliant story. It's way ahead of its time. I think what I liked about it the most is that it is... every aspect of this story goes against Campbellian science fiction, the golden age of science fiction type of stuff. This is not humanity at its best. This is not humanity using its technological know-how in a good way. This is not the dashing astronaut gets the girl. This is a totally different beast. And I think that's what really makes it work so well, is reading this and realizing that Harrison has gone and written the anti-science fiction story going against everything that had kind of come before it. And I enjoyed that, even though my initial reading of it was rough. Yeah, so I do recommend that you read it. I think it's really fun. From here on out, I'm going to go into spoilers. So if you want to read this first, give it a read. And if you don't mind spoilers, then go ahead and continue along. The first thing we're introduced to is kind of the boredom and vanity of Chrome, the main character in this story. And he's a space traveler that has come to a planet for no seeming reason. There's a huge causeway built on this planet that he tries to ask the locals about, but they won't talk about. But he can tell that there's no way they built this. But he can't even be bothered to fly the whole length of the bridge because he's obsessed with a woman on the planet that he's been watching for a week, and has decided does not have a boyfriend or a husband, and is hoping to take her away from the world and into his better world. Something that she has absolutely no interest in, which he ignores entirely and continuously tries to get her to go with him. And this entire story is his tantrum at the fact that she will not agree to go with him. And I found that really interesting and really ahead of its time in a genre where I usually kind of expect women to embody the themes and ideology of the times which it's written in, which makes perfect sense. I wouldn't expect anything different. But this one is a really refreshing change on that. So the next day, from what I talked about earlier, when he has this conversation with the woman who never is named, they really do start migrating. And before he realizes this, he's just flying his spaceship around, and they call it the machine. So he's flying his machine around, and he sees this old man walking along the beach with a basket in his hand, and he randomly picks up pebbles off the beach and puts them in his basket. And then he flies back to the village and sees that they're all gone. It's deserted. So he pulls out his megaphone and is trying to see if anybody's around, and nobody's around. So he starts going into houses. And finally, he goes into the woman's house that he is wanting to take away from the village. The atmosphere of his exploration of this one section of the bridge, when he sees the old man walking on the beach, and the description of the town being empty, is really beautiful. He has great prose. That's one of the reasons this is such a great story to read. But he is in this abandoned town. The atmosphere is beautiful, and he goes into the woman's house and is pissed that there's no message waiting for him from her, which is absolutely strange because she very seriously told him to go away, that they were not interested. Obviously doesn't have any desire to speak with him or anything at all, but he's still shocked that there's no message from him. And it says, "Soot stirred and rustled in the chimney as he examined some of her personal garments." So he is going through her house, touching her garments. Very, very strange stuff. Anyway, he eventually leaves, and he sees that the entire population of this area of the planet that he's on is making this migration. And they're all meeting, they're leaving their towns, and they're all meeting up along the main road. And he eventually finds this woman that he's obsessed with and runs up to her and takes her arm and is like, "Let's go. Let's get out of here." And she said, "No, I am not interested. I do not want to go with you." And he's like, "Why are you doing this migration?" And she has a really interesting response to that. Chrome hurried along and fell into step on her right. He caught her arm. "It's me. Please go away. I told you we can't be." "All right," he admitted. "I'm not interested in the rest of them. Why on earth are you going off with them like this? It's just something we do." And that's all the explanation we're going to get in this story of why the migration occurs. That's it. It's just something we do. Earlier, when he was having his first conversation with her, she turns him down, and she has a tendency to speak from the point of view of the entire village and not from her own point of view. Nobody has been here. This is just the first part of the story from the first page. "Nobody has been here for 100 years. Why should you take an interest?" Chrome didn't know. He had been bored with travel and almost frightened by the immense distance of his home. "You can get sick of the stars," he said. "We can't be helped, you know. You should go back where you came." She swept an arm vaguely across an arc of the sky, attributing to him several unlikely points of origin. The heavy stars. Surely she didn't think he came from there. Firelit. Her face was beautiful, strange. "People have tried. We don't want you here. Don't you see? We are ashamed." I believe that this shame has some connection to the migration, but again, this is a culture of these people that is never explained. And it's very interesting to me that Chrome literally doesn't care. He has no anthropological curiosity in him whatsoever. He doesn't care. He just wants this girl to go away with him. So he finds her during the migration, and she has a young man with her. And suddenly Chrome starts getting jealous and pissed. And this is where we find out that he watched her for a week. Because he says, "I watched you for a week. You don't have any husband or boyfriend. Who is this person? What is he to you?" And she responds, "He was out of town." And Chrome starts really insulting this guy. He's calling everybody peasants, saying that she doesn't need to be a part of them. And finally, this guy has enough and just steps out of line, grabs Chrome, pulls him out and away a little bit and says, "All right, how do you want it? Willingly or unwillingly?" And Chrome's like, "I don't understand." And this kid kicks him once and in the leg, and Chrome falls down and wets his pants. I'm not even kidding. He falls down and wets his pants. Obviously terrified of the violence. She's there standing over him. His pride is hurt because, of course, in his brain, he is much more technically advanced than these people. So he really can't handle being bested physically by one of them. Chrome turns his head and says he doesn't want any more violence. They go, and then he sneaks up on them in line and puts both of his fists together and hits him in the back of the neck, causing him to fall forward and pass out. And the people keep migrating, and for a moment she is taking care of her. I don't know if it's her husband, fiance, boyfriend, or what, but yeah, he basically runs up behind him and attacks him from behind without the guy knowing. And then runs and jumps in his spaceship and does the most annoying flyovers, makes terrible noise that makes them all fall to the ground and cover their ears while they're trying to migrate, and shoots red flares all throughout the night to make huge noises to keep them up. He throws a tantrum because this woman won't go away with him. And then finally, he sees that they're just going to keep on walking, and he realizes that they are going to the large bridge. They're obviously going to migrate all the way over that bridge, and he gets angry. He finds the old guy that was walking along the beach again. This is the only part of the story I can't really figure out, and I'm really looking forward to whoever reads this with me. It would be great to hear your takes on what this means in the book. This has a tendency, in my opinion, to be abstract to the point of almost very difficult to read. No, that's not true. This has a point of being abstract to the point that it's hard to pin down textual evidence for any type of educated interpretation of the text. It is the type of text that asks you to lay over your own interpretation without textual evidence because things just happen. So he meets this old guy again, and he asks the old guy what's in his basket. And in the basket is a bunch of stones, pebbles that he's picked up that are shaped like eggs. And the old guy tells him, "These are eggs." And I suddenly started thinking about turtles, migration, laying their eggs on the beach, the turtles migrating into the sea. My brain went everywhere that I could with this information, but I still wasn't able to link it up. I feel like the biggest mystery in this story is, what is this migration? And of course our lead character doesn't care, so we never really find out. After he talks to the old man, he gets tired of it all, and he goes and he blows up the bridge. He blows a huge chunk of the bridge up. He has to work very hard, lay plastic explosives all over, and he blows up the bridge. And all the migrating people walk up onto the bridge and get to this point where he has blown it up. And he pulls out his megaphone and he says, "Why aren't you migrating? Why aren't you migrating?" Like fourth grade anger tantrum stuff. And turns it off and is very smug and excited because he's going to offer her one more time, this woman that he's obsessed with. He's going to offer one more time to take her away from all this on her way back once she returns, now that they can't migrate anymore. And as he's watching, all the people start stepping off the bridge and falling to their deaths into the ocean below it. He's basically killed all of these people in his tantrum, and that's the story. That's it. And we are left with this protagonist that is so awful that you don't really want to talk about it. But then the more that you think about it, the more you think how amazing it was for this writer to be what I feel like is way ahead of his time, right? Where we see these concepts of this man who is unable to accept the answer of no from a woman, so much so that he has a tantrum that, although he probably didn't mean it, ends up killing off her and all of the people from her land. It's wild, and it really had me kind of shocked. And I love how much of a change this was from the kind of golden age Campbellian science fiction, which there's nothing wrong with. I enjoy that era of science fiction a lot too, but I just like seeing the new wave bucking against that, and this one bucks against that more than any that I've seen. Yeah. So if you read this, let me know your interpretation of it. Let me hear what you got from it. If you watch this video to the end, thank you very much. If you liked it, click like. If you like this kind of content, please click subscribe, because we'll be making a lot more of it in the future. And thank you so much for watching.